And one other question. Do you see a lot of chemtrails?
A lot of what, sorry?
Chemtrails from the airplanes. They
oh yeah, sure.
The air. You do?
Yeah. Because we're right underneath flight paths for multiple major airports, San Diego and LAX and Ontario, Palm Springs Airport, John Wayne Airport. Yeah, so I mean our air traffic overhead is pretty abundant. So yeah, that's to be expected. I mean, but that kind of comes with the territory of being in Southern California.
Yeah.
I'm just curious about. Have you done any chemical testing of the snow or the soil to see if the aerosol spraying has done? How much of it has landed?
I have not. I have not, and I'm not aware of any. Because if there was anyone going up to the high country doing that, then I would know about it. But I mean, in general, we tend to view our air quality as substantially better than lowland Southern California. I mean, it's pretty typical for me to be up on the mountain and look down and see all the yellow haze kind of below about 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 feet. And it's really rare that we get days where it gets up as high as, at least where Idlewild is, at 5,000 feet. But it pretty much obliterates most of lowland Southern California on many days. And I've definitely noticed an increasing tendency for days to be hazier in the lowlands in the last few years. It was my mom-in-law lived in the area for decades. Like I said, she described how bad it was in the sort of 60s and 70s, and then obviously significant changes were made and it improved for a while, but then it's definitely deteriorated again in the last probably 10 to 20 years. But populations of the human populations increased massively, particularly not so much right on the coastal fringe, but here more, we're basically 100 miles inland from LA, and all the towns and cities in the lowlands around here have increased in population enormously just in the, as I say, the 20 plus years that I've been in the area.
Yesterday you went, I saw on your website, you hiked from the peak via Devil's Slide Trail. Did you start at the peak, or what were you doing yesterday? What were you out doing?
Oh, yeah. Right. No, that was kind of one of I tried to get up to the peak, probably averages probably about 2 to 3 times a week. And so right now is kind of, I do that so that basically I can report on trail conditions, and exactly what I report on sort of varies by season. So right now the main concern has been snow and difficulties associated with kind of snow and ice travel. In the summer it would and the fall it would transition to a discussion more about water availability for hikers. So that was kind of the simplest of my regular kind of routes that I do to check on snow conditions, because that takes me from close to my house all the way up to the 10,800 feet at the peak. So I can kind of see how melting's progressing. And right now we're in kind of peak Pacific Crest Trail hiker season. The Pacific Crest Trail comes right through the San Jacinto Mountains. It doesn't actually go right to the peak, but many of the PCT hikers do go up there. And that was sort of one of the original genesis of the trail report, the website that I run, to basically be able to provide safety information for Pacific Crest Trail hikers, through hikers coming through the San Jacinto Mountains. So yesterday was an example of kind of a fairly quick survey to be able to kind of update the website and update through hikers on what the current conditions are.
I hiked it in 2014, through hiked the PCT, and I remember that descent, that 9,000 foot descent on going into Cabazon. That was 102 degrees, 20 miles of switchbacks. That was a toughie. I mean, that was hard. It was one of the toughest parts of the trail.
At least it's downhill.
It's downhill. It would never end. I remember we could see the bottom, but it would kept on switching back, and it said, when are we going to get to the bottom because of the switchbacks? It was kind of a funny, you know, they take it easy on you, I guess. It's not that steep, but it's quite an adventure, that mountain.
That was kind of the initial genesis for the trail report, was because the perception of most PCT hikers, and this is increasingly the case nowadays because we have a lot more. Well, we've had a massive increase in the number of people coming through on the PCT, and we're only 150 miles north of the starting point at Campo, and so one of the real challenges with the San Jacinto Mountains is that most people starting the PCT, particularly nowadays, like I say, many hikers are not as experienced as perhaps the average hiker who started it even just a few years ago. They kind of anticipate Southern California as all being kind of lowland desert, and the concern is going to be heat. But then lo and behold, bam, 150 miles into the trail, they have this nearly 11,000 foot peak that they have to work around. And this has kind of had a history of really catching out hikers. And it kind of depends on how you want to look at the statistics, but fortunately there haven't been huge numbers of fatalities on the Pacific Crest Trail, but arguably this little section, the San Jacinto Mountains, a section of about 60 miles from about PCT mile 150 through to about 210, has had the highest fatality rate of any short section of the PCT, including any part of the Sierra. And it's possible that is because people are not really anticipating what they have to deal with in what they perceive as a section of Southern California desert. You know, by the time they get to Kennedy Meadows and the Sierra, they have the gear, they anticipate having to deal with snow and mountains and higher elevation and the problems that come with that. But here in Southern California, so early on in the trail, they're not really anticipating that. And I kind of identified that as a problem now, it'd be about 5 years ago. And I was out hiking anyway. I mean, I'm just out hiking, mountaineering, enjoying myself anyway, going out with my dog, doing long trail runs. So I started reporting information initially in a sort of fairly old-fashioned format, just going around the agencies, State Park, Forest Service, one or two of the local hotels where PCTers were tended to stay, to pass on that information. And then that has evolved into what it is now, which is this, you know, fairly detailed blog and website, and started doing some little kind of vlogs, YouTube videos last year, because that's kind of the best way to get to all the hikers. And that was initially kind of just focused on PCT season, kind of March, April, May, June. And now I've moved that into being a year-round endeavor. Like I say, even after the PCTers are gone, we've got lots of hikers around. So then it's like, you know, obviously nowadays, because water has tended, like I was saying, how some of the perennial streams are no longer perennial. A lot of the springs dry up every year now. That's become a real issue for a lot of hikers who ordinarily would have just come up and camped here and not expected to have any issues with water. Now all of a sudden finding water can be a real challenge. So it's kind of a year-round thing.
No, I see you providing a true purposeful service to people. We're part of a nonprofit, an environmental educational nonprofit, and we really support people like you and recognize people like you and acknowledge, people like you that are really doing something with a purpose, truly of a benefit, actually. And you're working with nature, which is really cool. I see how you got started and, and how you've developed it, and through the years, now you're a formidable resource for people going through. I started in... Yeah.
I really appreciate that. Thank you. It's, like I say, it's I've been hiking since I was a little kid back in England, and obviously did an awful lot of hiking, backpacking, camping, outdoors work, in my profession. And then when I moved into semi-retirement, was just out in the mountains all the time, and got involved with local search and rescue. And fairly quickly, it's a remarkably simple concept, but the execution has been a bit more tricky. Is just recognize that rather than have people get into trouble and then have rescues that involve helicopters, which therefore involves taxpayer money and increased risk for other people, is there a way to get information out to people preemptively? It's sort of known as PSAR, preventative search and rescue, and it's like I say, in a perfect world there would be these kind of trail reports scattered all up and down the mountain ranges or all up and down the PCT. Of the 2,650 miles of the PCT, this is the only section, this sort of 50-60 mile section that has its own dedicated kind of trail report information source, that's kind of all in one place. So that's kind of unique. And like I say, there's probably, it would be useful obviously in many places, but it's perhaps especially useful here because almost all the hikers who start out coming south, but who are coming northbound, coming from the south, they make it to here. And because of the uniqueness of the location, the sort of abruptness of the mountain, it has had this history of kind of catching people out. And so the opportunity to sort of preemptively try and deal with that. And in some years, like last year, 2018 was a very dry winter. We didn't really have many significant issues other than just keeping updated on the springs, making sure that people knew where the water was, what water there was. But a winter like this one, 18, 19, and 16, 17 was kind of similar. So the 2017 PCT season, then, like I say, people are not necessarily planned and prepared for snow this early in the trail. So that was kind of the genesis for that. And I'd like to take the opportunity to point out it is 100% volunteer. Nobody pays me to do this. It's just I go out hiking a lot and turn it into a website. I have a lot of moral support from, like I say, State Park, Pacific Crest Trail Association, Forest Service. They use the information heavily, actually at this point, kind of heavily rely on it. The State Park, the Mount San Jacinto State Park, their Facebook page, actually, every time they update it, carries a link to the trail report, but none of it's funded by them. It's all, I have started, initially I didn't really want to go that route and worry about funding, but obviously, I tear through boots at several pairs a year and microspikes, and I destroyed a pair of snowshoes this year because I was out so much, and those kinds of costs add up. So I did start accepting donations just through the website. Which, I kind of feel like I'm getting to the point where I have no alternative but to do that just because of the amount of time and effort and energy involved.
Do you have any other sources of income or any?
No, no. That's for the trail report specifically. That's all I do. It's my people have suggested putting adverts on the website, but the problem is I feel like the information I'm putting up there is potentially kind of safety critical, and I don't want there to be a whole bunch of other stuff on the website that's going to just detract from that. I try to keep it focused on, because I don't want to sound dramatic, but but there is the potential for some of the information up there to be, if not life and death, then certainly makes the difference between somebody getting through the mountains safely as opposed to getting seriously hurt. And so I don't want to kind of fill up the website with a jumble of adverts and things like that. So someone like Second Chance Hiker, my friend Corey who came through, that was great publicity. That wasn't why we did it. We did it because we wanted to help people. But that obviously has increased the profile. But the Pacific Crest Trail Association, they link quite heavily to it. But as of right now, all I have is just the PayPal button on the website. I've not kind of taken it any further, but I'm always open to ideas and suggestions. Last year I estimated it was around just under 1,000 hours of volunteer time, something like 900 plus hours. This year it's going to be well over that because we've had an awful lot more snow. So I've been out on the trails just almost constantly. So this year it's going to be 1,200 to 1,500 hours, which if you do the math pretty quickly becomes almost a full-time, part-time job. Even though but I wouldn't do it if I didn't want to do it. I mean, I have a great time doing it and I enjoy it, and all the positive feedback and support is great. Yeah, that in itself is very fulfilling, I can see. But once we get going with our funding, and then we'll see what we can do to help too in our own way. That's very thoughtful. I appreciate that. Yeah. Wasn't there a rescue last month that I read? We've had, let me think, 1, 2, 3 to date of PCTers. Actually, literally half an hour before I got on the phone with you guys, I got a message about we've got another PCTer in distress up on Fuller Ridge at about PCT mile 187, something like that. And for the Sheriff's Search and Rescue is taking care of that. Otherwise, there was a brief possibility I was going to have to let you know that I couldn't make this call. But so we're currently, that would be the fourth Pacific Crest Trail hiker rescue that we've had in the San Jacintos this season. 2 of those were on a specific location called Apache Peak, around about mile 169, where we had some just really stubborn, steep, icy snow that stuck around for a couple of months and was causing real problems. We had a lot of falls there. Fortunately, we got very fortunate that none of them were terribly serious. We did have one broken ankle. That was about a month ago now. And that was the worst of those. And then we had a rescue that I was involved with of a young German Pacific Crest Trail hiker who got separated from his backpack out on Fuller Ridge. That was quite early in the season in some pretty nasty conditions. And I had to go and hike up and bring his backpack back out after it was located. Which was kind of a challenge, but that was that's compared to the number of hikers we have coming through these days and the kind of conditions that we've had this winter. I would consider that a huge success. Like I say, in the past, unfortunately, we've had a handful of fatalities and we've had some pretty serious injuries. So and every year. To give you an idea, I mean, the number of people doing the Pacific Crest Trail northbound in 2013 was about 900. It was under 1,000. This year, I think it's something like 5,000 to 6,000. So, I mean, the growth has been pretty much exponential just in the last few years. and with that kind of exponential growth has been more and more individuals who are, frankly, not experienced hikers, fairly green. And so that's added to some of the challenges. The other challenge that we've had that's kind of connected to that is that most years recently, because so many years have been dry, 2013, 14, 15, and 17 particularly, as a consequence, when we have one of these fairly typical snow years, or what used to be a typical snow year, like 17 and this year, 2019, that kind of catches people out because they're looking at a lot of the social media from years that have been much drier, and they're just not anticipating snow being a problem. And then suddenly we get a year like this one, and that kind of catches people out. So you got that in combination with I think there was another 10 to 15% increase in the number of northbound Pacific Crest Trail hikers this year compared to last year. So it's the demand for good information has never been higher. That's an understatement.